The machine had been sleeping under the mountain for 6,000 years. Dr. Park wiped the sweat from her forehead and stared at the object her team had uncovered. It was black, smooth, and shaped like an egg the size of a car. Strange symbols covered its surface. They glowed faintly with a pale blue light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. "What is it?" asked one of her assistants. Shook her head. She had spent 20 years digging up ancient artifacts in Korea. She had found pottery, weapons, bones, and temples, but she had never found anything like this. The material was not stone. It was not metal. When she touched it, the surface felt warm, almost alive. "Get the sensors," she ordered, "all of them." The underground facility was located near the old city of, once the capital of an ancient kingdom. His team had been searching for royal tombs when their equipment detected something strange buried deep beneath the earth. They had spent 3 months digging down to reach it. Now they stood in a chamber carved from solid rock. The walls were covered with paintings that made no sense. They showed strange creatures with long limbs and large eyes. They showed ships flying among the stars. They showed Earth, small and blue, with a red mark over the Korean peninsula. Felt cold despite the heat of the underground chamber. These paintings were 6,000 years old, but they showed things that should not exist. Her assistant returned with the sensors. The moment they activated, the egg began to hum. The blue light grew brighter. The symbols on its surface started to move, rearranging themselves into new patterns. "Turn it off," shouted. But it was too late. A beam of light shot upward from the egg, passing through solid rock as if it were air. The beam continued into the sky, beyond the clouds, beyond the atmosphere, and out into the darkness of space. The signal traveled at speeds faster than light. It crossed galaxies in moments, and somewhere in the vast emptiness between stars, something received it. The Empire had been waiting. Admiral Tarn stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Conqueror, and watched the signal appear on his screens. His pale skin showed no emotion. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as he processed the information. "Harvest World 7412, said his assistant. "The locals call it Earth." Tarn remembered the mission reports from 6,000 years ago. A small blue planet filled with primitive creatures who had just learned to farm and build simple homes. They had planted a beacon and marked the world for future collection. The creatures showed potential. They would make good workers once properly trained. "Show me their current state," he ordered. Images filled the screens. Cities of glass and steel, ships that traveled between planets, weapons that could split atoms. The primitive creatures had grown. Tarn felt something he had not felt in centuries: interest. "They have developed faster than expected," his assistant noted. "They have colonies on their moon, on the Red Planet, and on several moons of their gas giants." "How many of them are there?" "Approximately 12 billion across all their settlements." Tarn nodded. 12 billion workers would be useful. The Empire always needed more labor for its mines and factories, and these humans, as they called themselves, seemed strong and adaptable. "Send the declaration," he ordered. "Give them 1 lunar cycle to surrender, standard terms." The message was sent. It traveled across the stars and arrived on Earth within hours. Every screen on the planet displayed the same words. "To the INHABITNTS of Harvest World 7412. You have been claimed by the VENN Empire. You will surrender your leaders and your military forces within 1 lunar cycle. Your population will be RELOCATD for service to the Empire. Resistance will result in extinction. This is your only warning." General read the message 3 times. He was 73 years old. His hair was white, his face was lined with scars, and his body ached from decades of war. He had fought in the Titan Uprising when colonists had rebelled against Earth. He had commanded forces during the Europa conflict when 2 factions had nearly destroyed each other over ice mining rights. He had seen humanity at its worst and at its best, but he had never seen anything like this. The conference room was filled with the most powerful people on Earth: presidents, generals, admirals, and scientists. They all looked at him, waiting for his response. The United Defense Council had elected him as Supreme Commander 10 years ago. In times of crisis, his word was law. "Is it real?" asked President Han. She was a calm woman with gray hair and steady eyes. She had been a doctor before she entered politics, and she approached every problem with the same careful attention. "It is real," answered Dr. Shin. He was a thin man with thick glasses and nervous hands. He led Earth's top research facility and had spent the last 12 hours studying the alien signal. "The technology behind this transmission is far beyond anything we can create, and we have found their beacon. It matches the message perfectly." "How strong are they?" asked Admiral. She was younger than most of the people in the room, but her reputation was legendary. She had risen from cargo pilot to fleet commander through skill and bravery. Hesitated. "Based on the signal strength and the data we have gathered, their fleet numbers in the thousands, possibly tens of thousands. Their ships are larger and more powerful than ours." The room fell silent. Earth had 300 warships. Most were small patrol vessels designed to fight pirates and settle disputes between colonies. They were not built for war against an alien empire. "So we surrender," said a voice from the back. "We cannot win." Turned slowly. The speaker was a young diplomat, his face pale with fear. Did not blame him for being afraid. They were all afraid, but fear was not the same as weakness. "Surrender means slavery," said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room. "They do not want peace. They want workers. They want our children to dig in their mines. They want our to serve in their factories. They want to erase everything we have built and turn us into tools." He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city stretched toward the horizon. Millions of people living their lives, unaware that the sky would soon fill with alien ships. "I have fought my whole life," he continued. "I have killed men and watched friends die. I have seen the worst things humans can do to each other. But I have also seen what we can become when we stand together. We crawled out of caves and built cities. We crossed oceans and reached the stars. We survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that killed hundreds of millions." He turned back to face the room. "We did not survive all of that just to kneel before strangers." President Han nodded slowly. "Then we fight." "We fight," confirmed. "Send our response to the aliens. Tell them that Earth refuses their terms. Tell them that humanity does not surrender. Tell them to come and try to take us." The message was sent that same day. It was short and simple. "To the VNN Empire. We do not surrender. We do not kneel. Come and take us if you can." Across the galaxy, Admiral Tarn received the response. He read it twice, certain there was some mistake. In 6,000 years of conquest, no species had ever refused the terms. Hundreds of worlds had surrendered without firing a single shot. They understood the mathematics of war. They understood that resistance was pointless. But these humans did not seem to care about mathematics. Tarn felt something new stir in his chest. It was not worry. They did not worry. But it was something close to curiosity. What kind of creatures refused to accept the obvious truth of their own destruction? He would find out soon enough. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "We move on the harvest world in 3 cycles." The invasion had begun. Admiral Tarn could not understand the humans. He had conquered 47 worlds in his career. He had overseen the harvest of 3 billion workers. Every species he encountered followed the same pattern. First came fear. Then came negotiation. Then came surrender. It was simple mathematics. When faced with overwhelming force, rational beings chose survival. But humans were not behaving rationally. "Send an envoy," Tarn ordered. "I want to understand these creatures before we destroy them." The diplomatic shuttle landed on Earth 3 days later. It carried a single passenger named. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 eyes that moved independently. His role was to study other species and explain their behavior to the military commanders. Captain was chosen to meet him. She was 36 years old, a naval officer who had served on patrol ships for 15 years. She was not a diplomat. She did not smile easily or speak softly, but the generals wanted the aliens to see a real human, not a politician. They met in a conference room in Geneva. Outside, snow fell gently on the old city. Inside, two species faced each other for the first time. Studied with his 4 eyes. She was shorter than him, with black hair and dark eyes. Her uniform was simple and clean. She carried no visible weapons, but sensors detected several hidden devices. This creature was prepared for violence even in a diplomatic meeting. "You are smaller than I expected," said. His voice came from a translator device around his neck. "Size does not matter in war," replied. "It matters in our experience. Larger species resist longer. Smaller species surrender faster. They understand their weakness." Almost smiled. "Then you have never met humans." She activated a screen on the wall. Images began to play: ancient battles, medieval wars, modern conflicts. The screen showed cavalry charges and trench warfare. It showed nuclear explosions and city bombings. It showed humans killing each other in every possible way. Watched with growing confusion. "You fight each other." "We have fought each other for all of our history," said. "Before we knew other species existed, we had plenty of enemies, ourselves." The images continued. They showed the great wars of the 20th century, millions dead, cities destroyed, entire nations reduced to ash. They showed the water wars of the 21st century, famines that killed hundreds of millions, plagues that emptied continents. "This is your history?" asked. His voice held something that might have been horror. "This is what we survived." Changed the images. Now they showed humans rebuilding, cities rising from ruins, forests growing where bombs had fallen, children playing in places where their grandparents had died, ships launching toward the stars. "Every time we broke ourselves, we put the pieces back together," she said. "Every time we fell, we stood up again. We do not know how to stay down." Process this information. They had conquered species that were older than humanity. Species that had built great civilizations and achieved things humans could not imagine. But none of those species had this kind of history. None of them had spent thousands of years practicing war against themselves. "You are saying that fighting is natural to you," he said slowly. "Fighting is necessary to us," corrected. "We do not fight because we enjoy it. We fight because we refuse to accept defeat. There is a difference." "But defeat is certain. Our fleet outnumbers yours by a factor of 40. Our weapons are more advanced. Our soldiers are stronger. Mathematics says you will lose." Leaned forward. Her eyes were steady without fear or anger. "Let me tell you about mathematics," she said. 300 years ago, a small group of farmers in my country fought against a professional army. They had no training, no weapons, no chance of victory. Mathematics said they would die in days. They fought for 7 years and won." She pulled up another image. It showed ancient warriors with crude weapons facing soldiers with guns. 500 years ago, a tiny nation fought against an empire that covered half the world. They were outnumbered and outmatched in every way. Mathematics said they should surrender. They fought for decades and won. More images, more battles, more victories that should have been impossible. "Your mathematics does not account for human stubbornness," said. "It does not measure our willingness to die for things we believe in. It does not calculate the strength of people who have nothing left to lose." Sat in silence for a long moment. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as he processed everything he had seen and heard. Finally, he spoke. "Why do you not simply accept a peaceful surrender? Your people would live. Your culture would survive in some form. You would have a future, even if it was not the future you wanted. Stood up, she walked to the window and looked out at the snow falling on Geneva. Somewhere out there, 12 billion humans were waiting to learn their fate. Because we have bled for every inch of our world, she said quietly. Every city you see was built on bones. Every field has been a battlefield at some point in our history. We did not survive our own darkness just to bow to strangers. She turned back to face. Your empire has taken worlds for 6,000 years. You have never faced a species like us. We are not rational. We are not sensible. We are humans. And humans would rather burn than kneel. Returned to his shuttle 1 hour later. He spent the entire flight back to the fleet composing his report. He wrote about human history. He wrote about their wars and their recovery. He wrote about the strange light in Captain's eyes when she spoke about fighting. Admiral Tarn read the report in his private quarters. When he finished, he called to his office. "You believe these creatures are dangerous?" he asked. "I believe they are unpredictable," replied. "They do not follow the patterns of other species. They have spent their entire existence fighting wars they should not have won. They have turned defeat into victory so many times that they no longer believe in impossible odds. They are still primitive. Their ships are slow. Their weapons are weak." "Their bodies are weak," agreed. "But their minds are not. They will not surrender, Admiral. They will fight until the last human is dead, and even then I am not certain they would stop." Tarn dismissed the envoy with a wave of his hand. He did not share concerns. They had crushed civilizations far older and wiser than humanity. They had broken species that commanded powers beyond human understanding. What were a few billion primitive apes against the might of an empire? He ordered the invasion to proceed as planned. But somewhere deep in his mind, a small doubt had taken root. It would grow in the months to come. Back on Earth, General receives report of the meeting. He read it carefully, noting every detail about the alien envoy and his questions. "They think we are irrational," said. "They cannot understand why we would fight a war we cannot win." Nodded slowly. "Good, let them think that. Confusion is a weapon too." He called Dr. Shin into his office. The scientist arrived looking exhausted. He had not slept in days. His team had been studying the alien beacon nonstop, trying to learn everything they could about technology. "What have you found?" asked. "Their technology is advanced," said. "Centuries ahead of ours in most areas. Their ships are faster, their weapons are more powerful, and their shields can absorb almost anything we throw at them." "Almost anything." Smiled slightly. "They have never faced human tactics. Their wars have always been clean, organized, predictable. They line up their ships and fight in formation. They follow rules. And we do not follow rules. We invented guerrilla warfare. We invented terrorism. We invented suicide attacks and dirty bombs and psychological warfare. We have been finding creative ways to kill each other for 10,000 years." Understood what the scientist was saying. They had power, but humanity had something else, something that could not be measured in numbers or calculations. Humanity had the willingness to do whatever it took to survive. "Prepare our defenses," ordered, "and tell our people the truth. Tell them that a war is coming. Tell them that we are outnumbered and tell them that survival is not guaranteed." He paused. "And then tell them that we are going to fight anyway, because that is what humans do." The message spread across Earth and all its colonies. People heard the news and reacted in different ways. Some were afraid, some were angry, some were strangely calm. But no one suggested surrender. In factories and shipyards, workers began building weapons. In training camps, soldiers prepared for battle. In homes and schools and hospitals, ordinary people made plans for resistance. They were coming, and humanity was ready to meet them. The Armada entered the Sol system, on a cold Tuesday morning. 12,000 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel near the orbit of Neptune. They formed a perfect grid, each ship exactly the same distance from its neighbors. The formation stretched across millions of kilometers of space, blocking out the stars behind it. Admiral Tarn stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his fleet assemble. This was the moment he lived for, the moment before conquest, the moment when an entire species realized that their existence was about to end. Human fleet detected, his tactical officer reported. 312 vessels. They are holding position near the fifth planet. 300 ships against 12,000. Tarn almost felt sorry for the humans. Almost. Move forward, he ordered. Standard invasion formation. The fleet began its advance. It would take them 4 hours to reach Jupiter, where the human fleet was waiting. 4 hours for humanity to accept the truth of their situation. Commander floated in the command chair of her ship, the Unyielding. She was 34 years old, and she had never been more afraid in her life. Around her, the bridge crew worked in tense silence. They had all seen the sensor readings. They all knew the numbers. 300 human ships against an alien armada that could darken the sky. All ships report ready, her first officer said. His name was, and he had served with for 5 years. His voice was steady, but she could see the fear in his eyes. Good opened a channel to the entire fleet. This is Commander, I am not going to lie to you. The odds are against us. We are outnumbered. Most of us will not survive this day. She paused, letting the words sink in. But we are not here to survive. We are here to make them bleed. We are here to show these aliens what happens when they threaten our home. Every minute we hold them here is another minute for Earth to prepare. Every ship we destroy is one less ship that will reach our families. She looked at the screens showing the approaching enemy fleet. So many ships, so much death coming toward them. I joined the Navy because I wanted to see the stars, she continued. I never thought I would die out here, but if I must die, I am glad to die with all of you. I am glad to die as a human. Today, we fight for every person who ever looked up at the night sky and dreamed of something greater. Her voice hardened. So let us give these aliens something to remember. Let us show them why humanity survived when so many other species fell. Let us teach them the cost of threatening our world. She cut the channel and turned to her first officer. Begin Operation Chaos. The human fleet scattered. Admiral Tarn watched in confusion as the enemy ships broke formation and flew in every direction. Some dove toward Jupiter's atmosphere. Some hid behind its moons. Some flew directly at the armada in patterns that made no tactical sense. What are they doing? He demanded. Unknown, Admiral. Their movements do not match any combat doctrine in our database. Tarn felt a flicker of unease. Every species he had conquered fought the same way. They formed defensive lines. They protected their capitals. They followed logical patterns that his computers could predict and counter. But the humans were not forming lines. They were creating chaos. Open fire, he ordered. Destroy them all. The fleet unleashed its weapons. Beams of energy cut through space, each one powerful enough to vaporize a human ship in seconds. The first wave of attacks destroyed 40 human vessels before they could react. But then something strange happened. The human ships started using Jupiter itself as a weapon. They dove into the gas giant's atmosphere, using its massive gravity to sling themselves at incredible speeds toward the fleet. They hid in the radiation belts that surrounded the planet, letting the interference mask their positions. They used Jupiter's moons as shields, popping out to fire missiles before disappearing again. And they started ramming. Commander watched as the destroyer Horizon accelerated directly toward a battleship. The crew had evacuated into escape pods moments before. Now the empty ship was a missile, its reactor overloading as it approached its target. The battleship tried to shoot it down, but the horizon was too fast and too close. The collision was spectacular. The human ship tore through the alien vessel's shields and exploded against its hull. When the fire cleared, the battleship was split in half, bleeding atmosphere and crew into space. 3 more human ships followed the same pattern, then 5 more, then 10. They had never seen anything like it. Their tactical computers could not process enemies who deliberately crashed their own ships. Their soldiers could not understand creatures who chose death over retreat. "They are destroying themselves," the tactical officer reported. His voice was shocked. "They are using their ships as weapons." "Then they are fools," Tarn said, but his voice lacked conviction. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the human fleet had been reduced to 87 ships, but they had lost 600 vessels, 600 warships destroyed by an enemy they had expected to crush in minutes. Commander surveyed the wreckage from her damaged bridge. The Unyielding had taken multiple hits. Half her crew was dead. Life support was failing in 3 sections, but they were still alive. "We hurt them," said quietly. He was bleeding from a wound on his head, but he was smiling. Nodded, "We hurt them. Now we retreat and hurt them again." The surviving human ships fell back toward Mars, where the next line of defense was waiting. Colonel Menu stood on the slopes of Olympus Mons and watched the sky turn red. The landing ships were coming, hundreds of them, descending through the thin Martian atmosphere like metal rain. Each ship carried thousands of alien soldiers. Each soldier was trained and equipped with technology that made human weapons look like toys. Menu was 45 years old. He had been a teacher before the war, instructing young cadets at the military academy on Luna. When the invasion began, he had requested transfer to the front lines. He had arrived on Mars 2 weeks ago. Now he commanded 50,000 soldiers, defending the largest mountain in the solar system. "They will land on the northern plains," his aide reported. "Estimated enemy strength, 300,000. 6-to-1 odds. Menu had faced worse. "Let them land," he said. "Let them think they have won the easy part. Then we welcome them properly." The expected quick victory. Mars had no real cities, just research stations and mining outposts. Its atmosphere was thin, its gravity was weak, and its human population was small. Taking the planet should have been simple. It was not simple. The humans had spent weeks preparing. They had dug tunnels beneath the Martian soil. They had planted explosives in the rock. They had turned every crater into a kill zone and every canyon into a death trap. They landed their troops and began their advance. They marched in perfect formation, their weapons ready, their confidence absolute. The ground exploded beneath them. Thousands of soldiers died in the first hour. Hidden explosives tore apart their formations. Snipers fired from positions that should have been impossible. Human soldiers attacked from tunnels, killed as many aliens as they could, and then disappeared underground before they could respond. When the aliens tried to follow them into the tunnels, they found more traps, collapsing ceilings, poison gas, humans with knives who fought in the darkness where sensors could not see. Colonel Menu led the defense personally. He fought in the tunnels alongside his soldiers. He killed aliens with his rifle, his pistol, and when those failed, his hands. He was wounded 7 times in the first week. He refused to leave the front line. "Why do you keep fighting?" a captured soldier asked him. "You cannot win, your planet will fall." Menu looked at the alien with tired eyes. He had not slept in 3 days. His uniform was covered in blood, some of it his own. "Maybe Mars will fall," he admitted, "but you will remember the cost. You will tell stories about this place. You will warn others about what happens when you invade human territory." The Battle of Olympus Mons lasted 47 days. They eventually took the mountain. They planted their flag on its peak and declared victory, but the victory felt hollow. They had expected to lose a few hundred soldiers. They lost 80,000. 80,000 soldiers to capture a single mountain on a planet that barely mattered. Admiral Tarn received the reports with growing concern. The humans were not fighting like a species facing extinction. They were fighting like something else entirely, something that fed on war, something that grew stronger with every defeat. "How many humans died on Mars?" he asked. "Approximately 35,000, Admiral." 35,000 humans had killed 80,000 soldiers. The mathematics were wrong. Everything about this war was wrong. Tarn made a decision. He would not underestimate the humans again. "Forget containment," he ordered. "Forget minimizing damage. Bring the full fleet to Earth. We end this now." The Armada turned toward the blue planet that had started all of this. And on Earth, 12 billion humans looked up at the sky and prepared to fight for their home. The alien ships covered the sky like a metal blanket. From Seoul to Sydney, from Moscow to Mumbai, people stopped and stared upward. The fleet had arrived. Thousands of warships hung in orbit, blocking out the sun, casting shadows over entire continents. Drop ships began their descent, carrying millions of soldiers to the surface. Admiral Tarn broadcast his final ultimatum from the bridge of his flagship. "People of Earth, you have seen our power. You have witnessed the fall of your outer defenses. Surrender now and your suffering will end. Give us your leaders and your population will be spared. Resist, and we will burn your world until nothing remains." He waited for a response. He expected fear. He expected panic. He expected humans to finally accept the truth. President Han stood in front of cameras in a bunker beneath the Korean mountains. She was 58 years old. Her gray hair was pulled back, and her face was calm despite the chaos happening above. Behind her, generals and officers worked frantically at computer stations. "My fellow humans," she began, "the aliens have asked us to surrender our leaders. They believe that if they take the people at the top, the rest will follow." She smiled slightly. "They do not understand us." She stepped closer to the camera, her eyes steady and clear. "They think leaders are special. They think we are the ones who matter, but they are wrong. In humanity, everyone is a leader. Every mother who protects her child, every worker who builds our cities, every teacher who shapes young minds, every doctor who heals the sick, every soldier who stands on the line." Her voice grew stronger. "We are not a people who follow orders blindly. We are humans. We question. We fight. We refuse to accept what we are told. And today, every single one of us must become a leader." She raised her hand and pointed at the camera. "To the children watching, you are the future we fight for. To the elderly, your wisdom will guide us through the darkness. To the soldiers, know that we stand with you. And to the aliens listening, know that you have made a terrible mistake." She straightened her back. Humanity does not surrender. The broadcast ended. Across the world, people watched in silence. Then they began to move. In factories, workers grabbed tools and joined militia groups. In hospitals, doctors prepared for the wounded that would soon fill their halls. In schools, teachers led children to underground shelters while older students took up weapons. In homes, families said goodbye and went to their assigned defensive positions. They landed expecting to face a military. They faced a planet. Lieutenant was 23 years old. She had graduated from flight school 6 months ago. She had never seen real combat. Now she sat in the cockpit of an old fighter jet, looking up at an alien command ship the size of a small city. The command ship hung over Seoul, directing forces across the Korean peninsula. If it could be destroyed, the alien coordination in the region would collapse. "This is suicide," her wingman said over the radio. His name was, and he had been her classmate at the academy. "Probably," admitted. "But think about what we can do. That ship controls half their forces in Asia. If we take it down, we give our ground troops a chance." There are 50 fighters protecting it. We have 12 jets. The math does not work. Laughed softly. When has math ever worked for humans? She opened a channel to her squadron. 11 other pilots listened as she spoke. I am not going to order anyone to follow me. This is my choice, but I believe we can hurt them today. I believe we can show these aliens that every human life has a cost. If you want to go home, go. No one will blame you. No one left. Then let us fly, he said. The 12 jets launched toward the command ship. The interceptors moved to engage them. In the first seconds, 4 human pilots died. Their jets exploded in balls of fire that lit up the Korean sky. But the others kept coming. Flew like she had never flown before. She dodged energy beams and missile locks. She used her smaller, faster jet to get inside the formations where their weapons could not track her. She watched her friends die one by one, but she did not stop. When she reached the command ship, she was alone. Her weapons were empty, her engines were damaged. She had one option left. She aimed her jet at the command ship's reactor and pushed the throttle to maximum. In her final moments, thought about her mother who had died when she was young. She thought about her father who had taught her to fly model planes in the park. She thought about all the people on the ground who were counting on her. For Earth, she whispered. Her jet hit the reactor at full speed. The explosion was visible from space. The command ship broke apart, raining fire across the sky. Its loss threw forces into chaos. Human resistance fighters used the confusion to launch attacks across Korea. Thousands of alien soldiers died in the hours that followed. Became a legend that day. But she was only one of millions. In Moscow, factory worker led his neighbors in an attack on a patrol. They had no military training. Their weapons were hunting rifles and homemade explosives. They killed 40 alien soldiers before they were overwhelmed. A retired general named organized fishing boats into a guerrilla navy. They attacked supply ships at night, disappearing into the coastal waters before the aliens could respond. In Cairo, a young girl named guided resistance fighters through underground tunnels that dated back to ancient times. She was 14 years old. She saved 300 soldiers before a patrol found her. She died fighting. Stories like these happened everywhere. They had conquered planets before, but they had never faced anything like Earth. Every city was a battlefield. Every building was a fortress. Every human was a soldier. The aliens had superior firepower, but they could not be everywhere at once. They would secure an area, and resistance fighters would attack from behind. They would destroy one cell, and 2 more would appear. They would kill a leader, and someone else would take their place. Admiral Tarn studied the reports with growing frustration. His forces controlled most of Earth's surface, but they did not truly control anything. His soldiers lived in fear, never knowing when an attack would come. His supply lines were constantly disrupted. His casualties mounted daily. They fight in hospitals, one of his commanders reported. They fight in schools. They fight while their cities burn around them. They use their own children to smuggle weapons. They are animals, another commander said. No, Tarn replied quietly. Animals know when to stop. These creatures do not. He had conquered 47 worlds. He had broken species that existed for millions of years, but he had never seen anything like the humans. They were not afraid of death. They welcomed it. On the ground, General coordinated the resistance from a bunker beneath island. He had not slept in days. His screens showed casualty reports that should have broken his spirit. Millions of humans dead, cities in ruins. They controlled the air, the seas, and most of the land. But they did not control humanity. Sir, his aide said, we have confirmed reports from 6 continents. The resistance is holding. In some areas we are pushing back. Nodded slowly, and the casualties. Heavy on both sides. But, sir, they are losing more soldiers than they expected, much more. Walked to a window that looked out at the ocean. Somewhere out there, alien ships patrolled the waters. Somewhere out there, brave humans were dying to slow them down. We cannot win this war with strength, he said quietly, but we can win it with time. Every day they spend here costs them soldiers and supplies. Every day their other territories grow restless. We just have to survive long enough for the cost to become too high. He turned back to his staff. Tell our people to keep fighting. Tell them that their sacrifice matters. Tell them that every alien they kill, every supply convoy they destroy, every moment they resist brings us closer to victory. His voice hardened. And tell them that this is only the beginning. They have not seen what humanity can do when we are truly angry. The message spread through the resistance networks. Soldiers and civilians heard it and fought harder. They died in the thousands, but they kept fighting. On his flagship, Admiral Tarn made a decision. He would request reinforcements from the Empire. The humans were stronger than expected, but they were still just one species on one world. With more ships and more soldiers, he could crush them. He sent the request and waited. The response came 3 days later. It was not what he expected. No reinforcements available, the message read. Other harvest worlds are rebelling. Your reports of human resistance have inspired them. Hold Earth with current forces. Tarn read the message 3 times. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as he processed the impossible information. The humans had done more than resist. They had inspired. Across the galaxy, species that had surrendered without a fight were watching Earth. They were seeing humans die by the millions but refused to break. They were seeing a species that chose extinction over slavery. And they were beginning to hope. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Tarn felt something he had never felt before. Fear. 8 months had passed since the invasion began. The controlled Earth's surface, but they did not own it. Their soldiers lived in fortified bases, afraid to walk the streets alone. Their ships flew under constant threat of attack. Their supply convoys disappeared without explanation. Every night brought new explosions, new ambushes, new losses. The humans had become ghosts. General emerged from hiding on a cold morning in February. He had spent months building something they had not expected, a unified resistance. Cells in every country, on every continent, all connected through a network the aliens could not trace. Dr. Shin had made it possible. The scientist had cracked the communication system using technology salvaged from destroyed enemy ships. Now humanity could listen to alien orders before they were executed. They could disrupt commands at critical moments. They could turn this greatest strength into a weakness. The network is ready, reported. He looked different than before. Thinner, older. The war had aged everyone. We can jam their communications across 40% of the planet simultaneously. How long can we maintain it? 4 hours, maybe 5. After that, they will adapt. Nodded, 4 hours would be enough. Tonight, we strike everywhere at once. Every cell, every country, we show them that Earth is not conquered. It is waiting. The message went out through the resistance network. Fighters from Brazil to Bangladesh received their orders. They checked their weapons. They said goodbye to their families. They prepared to die. Park sat in a cave in the Gobi Desert and cleaned his rifle for the 100th time. He was 40 years old. Before the war, he had worked in a factory that built spacecraft engines. He had been good at his job. He had a small apartment, a few friends, and a simple life. The invasion had taken all of that. His wife had died in the first bombing. His home was dust. His friends were scattered or dead. All he had left was his daughter and his rifle. Park was 17. She sat beside her father, loading magazines with ammunition they had stolen from a convoy. Her hands were steady despite her age. The war had forced her to grow up fast. "You should stay behind," said. It was not the first time he had said it. "And you should stop asking," replied. It was not the first time she had refused. Looked at his daughter. She had her mother's eyes, strong, stubborn, refusing to accept defeat. He wanted to protect her. He wanted to send her somewhere safe. But there was nowhere safe anymore. "I promised your mother I would keep you alive," he said quietly. "And I promised myself I would fight beside you," met his eyes. "We are a family. Families stay together." Could not argue with that. He had never won an argument against the women in his family. "Then stay close to me," he said, "and if I tell you to run, you run." "I will run toward the enemy," said with a small smile. Despite everything, laughed. The attack began at midnight. Across the world, resistance fighters struck at the same moment. In Europe, they destroyed fuel depots. In Asia, they ambushed command posts. In Africa, they liberated prisoner camps. In the Americas, they sabotaged communication towers. They were caught completely off guard. Their communication network collapsed. Orders from headquarters never reached the front lines. Soldiers responded to attacks only to find their positions already overrun. Led his group against the primary ground base in the Gobi Desert. It was the largest alien installation in Central Asia, housing 50,000 soldiers and enough weapons to supply an army. His force consisted of 300 fighters, farmers, teachers, factory workers, people who had never held a gun before the war, people who had lost everything and had nothing left to fear. They attacked at dawn. They had sensors and shields and weapons that could kill from kilometers away. But they did not expect humans to charge directly into their fire. They did not expect enemies who kept coming after being shot. They did not expect fighters who detonated explosives strapped to their own bodies to breach defensive walls. Fought through the outer perimeter with his rifle hot in his hands. He saw friends fall beside him. He saw young people who should have been starting their lives instead dying in the sand. He kept fighting. Stayed at his side. She fought with a cold focus that frightened him. She killed aliens without hesitation. She dragged wounded fighters to cover. She refused to stop. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the base was burning. Human flags flew over its ruins. 300 fighters had attacked. 97 survived. Stood at the center of the base, covered in blood and dust. His rifle was empty. His body ached from wounds he had not yet noticed, but he was alive. And was alive. He pulled his daughter into a hug, not caring that they were both covered in gore. She held him back, her body shaking with exhaustion and relief. "We did it," she whispered. "We did it," he agreed. Around them, the other survivors began to cheer. It was a small victory in a war that had cost millions of lives, but it was a victory. The news spread quickly. Across Earth, resistance fighters heard about the attacks. 47 major strikes, 31 successful. They had lost more soldiers in one night than in the previous 3 months combined. Admiral Tarn received the reports with cold fury. His commanders stood before him, trying to explain how a planet of primitives had coordinated such a devastating blow. "They hacked our communications," one commander said. "They knew our deployments, they knew where we were weak." "Then find their network and destroy it," Tarn ordered. "We are trying, Admiral, but they move constantly. Their technology is crude but effective. Every time we locate a transmitter, it has already been abandoned." Tarn dismissed his commanders with a wave. He stood alone on his bridge, staring at the blue planet below. He had been wrong about the humans. He had thought they were primitive, weak, unable to challenge the might of the Empire, but he had underestimated something that his species had never truly understood. Desperation. The humans were desperate. They had nothing to lose. They had watched their cities burn and their families die. They had been pushed to the edge of extinction, and instead of breaking, they had become something else entirely. They had become survivors. Tarn opened a channel to his fleet. His voice was calm, but his 4 eyes showed something that might have been worry. All forces will consolidate into defensive positions. No more expansion. No more patrols in hostile territory. We will hold what we have and wait for reinforcements. But reinforcements were not coming. On the other side of the galaxy, the Empire was falling apart. Word of Earth's resistance had spread to every conquered world. Species that had surrendered without a fight watched humans die by the millions but refused to break. And they began to ask themselves, if these primitives can resist, why can we not? Rebellions erupted on 12 worlds in a single week, then 20, then 50. The empire that had stood for 6,000 years was cracking. On Earth, General received the news with quiet satisfaction. They are afraid, Dr. Shin said. For the first time, they are afraid. Good, replied. Fear makes people stupid, it makes them make mistakes. He looked at the reports coming in from around the world. The resistance was stronger than ever. Recruitment was up. Morale was high. They were being pushed back. We are still outnumbered, warned. They still have the firepower to destroy us if they choose. They could destroy the planet, agreed. But what would that cost them? They came here for workers. They came for resources. If they burn everything, they get nothing. He smiled grimly. We have turned their investment into a loss. And they, for all their power, are businessmen at heart. They are starting to calculate whether Earth is worth the cost. He stood and looked out at the sky, where alien ships still hung in orbit. Now we make sure the cost keeps rising. We fight until they leave or until we are all dead. There is no other option. The resistance agreed. And the war continued.